You're listening to Genuine Chit-Chat. This show is for real.
Hello there, friends, and welcome to another episode of Genuine Chit-Chat. This week, my guest is Spider Dan of The Secret Bores. So if you haven't heard of Spider Dan before, then shame on you, because he is a delight. He was on some of the Book of Boba Fett discussions that I did. They're on my YouTube channel, but also on the feed of Comics in Motion. And we've got more things planned for the future, both for this show, for his, and for some other places too. So this is not the last time you'll be hearing from Spider Dan, and I would hope it's not the first, but in case it is, it's not going to be the last. But in addition, this whole conversation was over 2 hours long, so I split it in two. Part one on this feed on this day. Part two will release this time next week, but if you can't wait for that, please consider checking out my Patreon. For only £1 a month, you get access to any episodes of Genuine Chit-Chat that get split in two. You get access to both parts in one unsplit episode when part one drops, so now. And in addition to that, you also get at least one episode of mine and Megan's weekly Afterthoughts show as well. So lots of cool nerdy stuff for that, but I'll get into that a bit more in the outro after you've heard part one of the conversation. But I will add in here, there are going to be some slight spoilers. So if you haven't seen Black Widow, there's going to be some spoilers for that, as well as Spider-Man No Way Home, and then some generic MCU spoilers. So like, I think the Doctor Strange trailer gets mentioned. I don't think we talk about what happened in there, because I don't think I had actually watched it at the time of recording this. But generally, I'd say if you are really against having anything spoiled for you, or any discussions of what's to come in some Star Wars or some MCU shows, as of recording this, it's mid-February 2022, so it's after Hawkeye, but before Moon Knight and after Book of Boba Fett. Now, we don't explicitly discuss those things ad nauseum, but I just want to pre-warn that I know some people are really hot on spoilers and don't want anything being discussed, so that is your mild spoiler warning. But if you're like me and you're generally caught up with MCU stuff by now, there's nothing that we discuss that's going to be a spoiler at all. But yeah, just in brief, we basically talk about how and why Dan started a podcast, his career in acting. We then talk about both of our love of movies, and we talk about cult classics, and it's a big old movie discussion primarily. And then after that, we kind of discuss a little bit more about cinemas and those sort of things. And then we start to talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and that sort of thing. And then that kind of bleeds into part two of the conversation, because that's where it kind of splits. But that's enough from me, guys, aside from me saying there's going to be a quick promo for the Era of Geek podcast by a friend of the show, Paul DeMac, also known as the Super Dummy Paul. He's on Superheroes for Dummies, but he launched his own show called Era of Geek last year. I was on, I think, the first or second episode that got released of that. Many members of Comics in Motion and people I've had on this show have actually been on Era of Geek. It's a really, really cool show. And if you've never listened to Dan before, I would recommend checking out that episode of Era of Geek before you listen to this full conversation with him, just because it gives a good amount of information about Dan in himself. And yeah, it's just a really good show. I think more people need to go check out Era of Geek and follow it on social media and that sort of thing. But a link to that is in the description. So without further ado, here's the promo for Era of Geek, and then part one of my conversation with Spider Dan.
In a world of stereotypes, being called a geek comes with a certain image.
There is still that ingrained thing within me that is a little bit embarrassed about it.
In reality, geek culture has never been more mainstream, and behind every geek is a real story.
My dad was the one who got me into Star Wars and things.
Join me, your Super Dummy Paul, as I continue my learning experience and talk to the real people.
I'm a secondary school teacher, so I teach 11 to 16-year-olds in English.
Subscribe to Era of Geek to hear their stories.
It's one of them, like, you're ever going to grow up? And I'm like, no, why should I? I like my life. I enjoy what I do. This is my hobby.
Search for Era of Geek on your favourite podcatcher or go to superdummy.co.uk/geek.
Welcome to Genuine Chit-Chat, where we have honest conversations with interesting people. And I'm your host, Mike Burton. Here we are. I am here with the all-powerful Spider Dan, and we've been nattering on for about 20 minutes before even pressing record about a wide variety of things, some of which we're not specifically going to tell you guys, because other podcasts and things kind of have them either out or soon to be out. But Dan, good sir, when we start the podcast, by you telling us, I know I'm not going to try and tread all the same things that happen in Geek. I really recommend people go and check out Era of Geek, Paul DeMac, the Super Dummy Paul. I'll make sure I put a link in the description, because that's like a really good intro to you as a person. So this is more of an add-on to that. I don't want to be instead of. But the name Spider Dan, why don't you tell us sort of where that came from, why you started a podcast, and we'll just kind of flitter about from there.
When I was a kid, I got all sorts of horrible fucking nicknames. Like, you name it. I had all. They all seemed to be around the size and shape of my head. And I was like, it would started off, and it was like, you got a big fucking head, you got a triangle head, you got a fucking alien head, and then things just kind of escalated from there. They were like, you look like fucking Z from Ants, that film, or you look like Zurg, Zurg from Toy Story. Because I didn't get that one really, because they were like, alien, he's an alien. That movie was out at the time, so Zurg. I was like, sure, what the fuck? It doesn't matter. So I kind of, it was kind of a nickname I kind of gave to myself, which I guess is not really the way nicknames should really work. I'm like,
for branding, it works. I mean, that's what a brand is, isn't it? When you want to, like, the thing is, make sure you keep your brand and blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's how people remember you. So that actually works out for the best in the long run.
Yeah, in a weird way, it kind of makes sense. Like, I've always been like, Spider-Man is my, personal hero. You can see him in the fucking background even now. Several Spider-Man, Marvel related. Oh, there's MODOK. Several related kind of stuff. But like for me, that was like very key component to kind of who I was and relating to that journey of that character, being the nerd and wanting to be something different and to be greater than what you appear to be, like the hero inside yourself. I kind of did that, and obviously I was a big Spider-Man fan, so I think I just kind of called myself that, because it was kind of like, it's kind of catchy and kind of worked, and everyone knew I was kind of into Spider-Man, so why not? The podcast kind of came out of me. I kind of came out of I'd done 10 years worth of acting, professional work, longer, probably more like 15 years if you include the years of college training. I did 3 years at college and then another 3 years at uni, so maybe more like 16 years total. Yeah. I was really into it as a kid, like really young, and then I kind of fell out of it because I was like, I'm a teenager and I'm too cool to prance around on stage. I want to get with girls. And I didn't get with any girls, so that was the problem.
So you're back to acting.
So I was like, yeah. Well, it's interesting because I've talked about it on the Geek podcast and said, I have learning difficulties, and that's affected me kind of socially and growth, learning and just getting on with people, kind of socializing. I have got better over years, thank fuck. Or I just I don't know where I'd be, just in some sort of hole. Chained up somewhere, but yeah, and that kind of I failed up like pretty much all my GCSEs. I didn't get any C grades. I was like, fuck, what do I do now? And they were like, at college, they were like, you can do art or you can do acting. And I was like, well, I'm shit at art, so I'm gonna have to reignite that old kind of passion. And again, it kind of lit that fire, and yeah, I just continued. I went top grades throughout college, went on to uni. Came out with a kind of a 2-1, which, for someone who's, has learning difficulties, that was, I was like pretty chuffed with that. It's, I knew I wasn't going to get first. There's no way. Even I was like, I don't work that hard. I don't deserve a first. I don't suck up enough as some of these other actors. But like over the time, I've had a great career, and I did a lot of theatre mostly. I did a little bit of kind of TV and extra stuff, but mostly kind of comedy or kind of comedic roles or villain roles mostly. I was very rarely the kind of romantic lead. I did have one sex scene, and it was with one of my best friends. So it was a gay sex scene from Angels in America, if you're familiar with that TV series.
But now that you mentioned a gay sex scene, I might just have to take a look.
You want to? Yeah. Well, it's not recorded. I don't think we've got it recorded anywhere. There's a funny little story. Maybe I'll save that for a little later on. But yeah, I kind of over the years and stuff, I kind of fell out of love with acting, and I think you're not in it for the fucking money. So
no.
So if you don't love it, what's the point in doing it? And I became a bit kind of complacent. I became a bit kind of lazy and the bitter, twisted actor, and I was just doing it for the sake of doing it. I was earning money and stuff, and I was just like, I didn't do the research and things. I was just like, I'll just do this. I've done this kind of character before. I'll just do this. And that's not the way you should be. You should be giving it your all. You should be putting in the effort. You should be passionate that you're going home and researching and reading plays and doing the work that is required to realistically, or surrealistically, whatever the role is, portray that character. And it was just kind of like, I think it was the emergence of kind of social media and the idea that people were getting cast purely on how many followers they had on Twitter, as opposed to being actually talented or being a good actor. That was it, because you can get all these people to come see the show and they'll pay tickets and book the tickets in early and stuff in advance.
Same with bands.
I've
got friends who are in bands and stuff, and they're like, I've got 50 friends on Facebook who would willing to come to my first show, and then another 10 who'd come to the second or third. On the fifth show with the same 6-song set, most people check out. But if you've got someone who's got like 1 billion friends on Facebook or whatever, and they're just like, if you get less than 1% every time, a lot of the promoters are going to be like, oh, I love that band because you bring loads of people, even though you don't sound good and this other band sound brilliant. We want you to bring people for money. So I do get that kind of element.
Yeah, there is a kind of I think the best word to describe how I felt was kind of jaded. I think that's the best kind of word to describe it. And I just felt out of love with it. It's like a bad relationship. If neither of you are putting in 100%, it's not going to work out. If you're not making the effort, it's not going to work out. And it was kind of like that. And I described it that way. And again, it was like a bad relationship because I knew it was over, but I kept like holding on. I was like, it'll get better, it'll improve. We'll, if I do this or, something will happen. If I get this next part. And I just, I fell out of the world. I fell out of the social circle because there is a kind of a social circle involved as well. And the networking element. And I was just like, why the fuck am I doing this? But I knew if I didn't do something creative in some form, I was going to want to fucking kill myself if I'm just doing a day-to-day mundane job, like yourself, like, you don't live for your job and I don't live for my job. It's literally just that gives me money to do things like this, or gives me the ability to live and do the kind of things I want to do. And, and I've got a Patreon with my, some of the followers and a lot of people in the Comics in Motion group. They're amazing because I very rarely deliver on my Patreon. I'm like, fucking hell, why are they still paying me? I need to do more things. Again, there's one coming up, I promise, that I need to do, which I will do very soon after editing a 4-hour podcast. But it kind of came out of that, and I've always had a fondness for kind of cult film and underrated kind of media, be it comic books, especially a big comic book fan as well. So I just kind of slammed them together, and I kind of looked around, and I'd been on a couple of podcasts previously, and I went, you know what, I can do this. I'm sure I can do this. I knew nothing going in. I didn't know what an RSS feed was. I didn't know how to edit. I didn't know what you do. I didn't have the money to get the gear really that I needed, which is tough. But I think the thing with podcasting is great is you can do it in so many different ways. You can, you can have your lapel mics. You can do it on your phone. It can be as long as you want or as short as you want. You can talk about whatever the fuck you want. The sky is the limit. Do what you want. And I love that ability to just like, and my show is random as fuck anyway, because, last week I was talking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre comic. And this week I'm talking about Disney feminism, and I'm all about the variety. So, the spice of life. And I try and get as many kind of different guests on, different voices and opinions and stuff. And I like it because there's always a different version of me on every show, depending on who I'm with. And so everyone gets to see a little bit of a different side of me. But that's basically what the show is about. It's about kind of exposing people to sometimes the good and sometimes the bad. I know Andy would say the bad of films and comics and things like that. So, but I just want my Angry Andy, episodes as well, but I want them on my show. So I'm poaching in.
That's how I feel sometimes when I have, because obviously you, me, Rhea, and Megan, we're sorting things out in the background for like a show that's going to have numerous episodes over the year and the future and things. And I'm sure we'll probably branch out with other people as well. But at the moment, it's just going to be the four of us. And it's just one of those things where it's like, I just want to chat. Me and Megan to chat with a couple of other people about this thing. And it's like, we would just happen to get into a conversation about it. And we're like, well, we just do it. Like, podcasting for me is an excuse. Like I might have said on Geek actually. But yeah, people go check out Geek if you haven't already.
Really do it.
It's great. It's so much fun.
Such a great idea. And like Paul let me absolutely just... I think Paul speaks twice, and I only allow him to speak twice in his own show. But I think that's a gift as well, to give people that time, that opportunity to open up. And it was really nice to do that. And this is a similar thing. This is the appendix, if you will, to that episode.
The epilogue. It's one of those things where I kind of started the podcast partly because some of my friends told me as well. They were like, Mike, you talk an awful lot. You want a creative outlet. You stop doing the YouTube thing. You stop making music videos for bands. You're not musically talented. You can't sing for shit. So podcasting, that's a long and the short of it. I could have learned an instrument. I just don't have the patience for it. I used to play keyboard and I tried guitar and stuff. I just don't have the patience. I want to be able to just kind of click my fingers and things kind of be done. Although podcasting, that wasn't the case necessarily. I had to self-teach. But because I already had the background in doing YouTube stuff and music videos, I knew the basis of audio editing and video editing and just audio editing on the low scale where it's just cutting silence out of people talking and making sure things are loud enough, quiet enough, reduce echo, bass, etc. It's very simple. Not like actual full-on talented mastering. Nothing like that. I can't do that. But because all those things, and like I had a apprenticeship and I did graphic design a lot and I did media studies, I have like all these little skills that really help when like being a podcaster and being able to basically do everything yourself. And that's what I've always been doing. And it was just one of those things where I was like, I just want an excuse to talk to people about a lot of these things. And one of the reasons, even like the Afterthought show I've got with Megan on my Patreon, the only reason we've really got that is because when me and Megan watch a film, I'll ask her, oh, what do you think of that? And she'll go, yeah, it's pretty good. Oh yeah, it was all right. And I go, any more to say? She's like, not really. This bit was cool, I guess. And there's no way to get out of her. But if she's in a conversation with someone else about it, she'll open up loads. And so it's like on Afterthoughts, it's just like I chuck on a mic and I get to talk with Megan about the films I want to talk to her about. And because she does have that part in her where I don't think she thinks she has this, but she does have that presenting part in her where she does want to, she is very funny. She
wants to share with people and exactly that experience. She's great. I really, every time I've listened to the show, I'm not on the Patreon.
I'm not. This isn't me trying to dig at you. Going, Dan, you're not on my Patreon. No,
better be on that. Yeah. Every time I mention it to my other friend, he was like, I'm paying for a mortgage. I can't have that on my thing. And I'm like, don't worry about it. It's fine. I literally expected nobody's, when I started it, I went, I'm just going to put it out there. If people join, it's fine. But I really expect nobody to jump on and do it. And then within the day, I had 3 or 4 people and I was like, fuck me. And then 5, and then 6 and so on. And again, such great people, so patient, and they love everything I do, always sharing and stuff, and it's brilliant. And yeah, Megan is great. The more I hear from Megan, hear about Megan, the more I'm impressed by her, just her everything she's done and her entire life. I'm like, wow, she is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, she speaks 4 languages. She's learning a 5th language, learning how to speak German as well. She can play like banjo, saxophone, keyboard, steel pan. She's like played steel pans and things in a steel pan band. She's traveled like loads of Europe, like by herself. Like her and a friend of hers just for a month went interrailing, just going on the trains through like Romania to like from like Spain to Romania to like all kinds of other places and stuff. And obviously where she can speak 4 languages and do all that. And I'm like, fuck me. Like, what was I doing when I like moved out of home? I was like, nothing. Nothing at all.
I was probably just wanking. I think that's all I was doing.
Lots and lots of porn visits, and like, I've got an encyclopedic knowledge of porn stars, which is helpful.
I've traveled the world. I've traveled the world through porn. Brazilian, Japanese. Even you talking about your skills and music and editing and stuff, and I was like, I could barely act. On a good day, I was like, that's just, I can just about, like, I think that was why I did it as well, because somebody was like, I think initially it was kind of like, I don't want to be me, I don't like me, so I'm just going to become somebody else. I'm going to be sexy and heroic, or I'm going to be a psycho killer or a creep or a weirdo. One of my friend's mums, she came up to me once, and we did a comedy sketch, and I played a creep in it, surprise, surprise, which is seemingly one I get cast as a lot, and it was like, and she went, "You do creepy very well." I was like, is that a compliment? I was like, I'm not sure if that's like, is it just the way I look? I'm like, and I don't know, but I was like, okay, thanks.
That's why.
Moving on.
That's why I couldn't be an actor, really, because especially when I was younger, it was just like, well, I have to pretend to be other people, but I want me. So it was like, no, there's no me pretend to be other people. I was too egotistical for that sort of tomfoolery.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of ego, a lot of pretentiousness and ego in the acting world, and I've experienced it. And I think there's a bit of that kind of pat yourself on the back type thing, and that there's a showcase for yourself and you want people to come up to you. It's one of those things where it's almost like people have to come and tell you did a good job. Like directly after, like, did you like the show? What did you think of the show? Was I good? Tell me more. Yeah. Feed me more compliments. It's kind of like you're almost like you're trapped and you have to say that you love it.
Yeah.
Like you go to someone's wedding and go, oh, it's so beautiful. And then they turn around and go, no, it's a piece of shit. My wedding would be much better.
It's what you think and what you say, isn't it? It's like anything, though, because like with performing, it's one of the reasons why this podcast was so good for me, because I started it 4.5 years ago now. Let me think.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's September 2018, I think, is when the first episode dropped. So I was doing it a little bit before then. But for me, it worked really well because I'm attached to the name and the brand and stuff, but ironically, it's not about me. So it's that kind of thing where it's like, although people who like me as a host will then tune in more, the point of it is not about me. The point is, probably about half to 2/3 of the conversations I have are with people who are, everyone is slightly more interesting than I am on these shows, but part of that half to 2/3 is kind of like, these are people that I want them to talk as much as possible. They probably won't come on the show again because they've got this one or two things to talk about, but this is really, really interesting to hear. And then the other sort of quarter to third-ish is people like yourself and other podcasters who I'm friends with, and it's just, I want an excuse to chat to this person for an hour to two, and recording it and putting it out there is a lot of fun. So it's kind of that nice mix where it's like, although people come in and listen for me, the good thing is that if I talk too much, it takes away from the show, so I have to self-manage certain parts of me. Yeah,
I definitely, like, I sometimes have to kind of check in with myself while I'm doing it, because I'm a talker.
Same.
I am a talker, and I want to say that, I don't just talk over people, but I do. I will honestly, like, you listen to my shows, there's times where I just be like, nah. Like, if you listen to the one with Jack, the one we did on the Alfred Hitchcock, we did Rear Window, we did Body Double, and we did Disturbia.
Mm-hmm.
I was editing that, and I went, fucking hell, Dan, shut the fuck up. You've got an amazing, talented, film reviewer, a teacher of film who knows more than you fucking do, you idiot. What are you doing? You're talking all over it. You're running roughshod all over him. I will say, in my defense, I either got a flu jab or a COVID jab that day, but I felt so bad. I was like, I need to get him back on again and actually let him fucking speak this time. So we did our Wrong Direction recently on 1941.
I think I've either just finished that or I'm in the last few minutes of that. It's a film I'd never seen. I'd never even heard of it. And then I saw a lot of people, and then when I saw you guys were like, yeah, it's not good, I was like, okay.
I can listen to it without the spoilers.
It's like with VHS Strikes Back or the Comics in Motion TV movies thing. It's either I've seen it or it's so bad I'm never going to watch it. But it's that weird middle ground where it's just like, there's quite a few. I'm a film buff as well, but there's a large amount of films I just haven't seen. And we've got one of those 100 movie posters where you can like scratch it off like a scratch card at certain films that you've seen, and it shows a nice little cool non-copyrighted image. It's quite funny seeing some of the things like American History X is a tooth on a curb, and I'm like, that's cool. Even that is, yeah. And then you've got Terminator, it's just sunglasses with like a red dot there, and I was like, that's just Terminator enough so you don't get sued.
They do them online, the minimalist posters for movies.
Yeah, exactly.
I like those. They're really well done, and again, just a simple. I love it, like really simple images, and even like comic book. My favorite like comic book costumes on superheroes are the ones that have simplicity about them. Like, again, I love Spider-Man. That is probably one of the more complex ones. With all
it's
the
quite blocky in color, though, isn't it? I mean, and it depends which one you think about. I mean, if you think about complexity of almost. If you think about like coloring in individual areas, maybe, but I suppose think about. I think it's more so when if it's just him standing there. Well, excuse me. If it's just him standing there, it's not too bad, but I think it's more so when he starts to turn and trying to get the perspective of the webs on it properly. Because with Batman, it's a bit easier because it's, a lot of it's just darkness, so it's quite easy. And Superman is just blue and abs and a bit of red. Whereas, Spider-Man with those lines, I'm just like, if you have that front-on shot and then he bends over slightly, the whole of the drawing of the actual webbing on his chest. So thinking about it more so, I think you're right. It's probably one of the most complex perspective-wise to draw.
Well, if you notice in a lot of the animation as well, they do very minimal webbing because it's too hard to animate if you just got loads of little... Here's a comic book fact that you may or may not know. So early on when Spider-Man was, would shoot like webs towards the camera, it would just be like a net and they'd just be like... and it'd just become more netting. Yeah. And then Todd McFarlane came along in like the late 80s and he invented what he calls the spaghetti webbing, which is like the long strand with the kind of looping round it, which is basically what it is now. That's the standard kind of Spider-Man webbing for the most part. And that was so he could use it as it was like, imagine it as a kind of like a film camera, and it was kind of what he wants to shoot it towards, wants him swinging directly into the camera and stuff. And that's all my bag. That early 90s, late 80s Spider-Man artwork is like, it's pucker. It's absolutely pucker. It's a proper my bag, all that stuff, and the 90s was not necessarily the greatest time for comic books necessarily, but I think there was some good stuff in there.
Whereas with movies, it's kind of the opposite. I'd say 90s. I mean, 80s has got some incredible movies. I always say 80s is, I think for me, the 80s is where the turn happens, where the percentage of amazing movies increases. I mean, the volume of movies in general increases, so maybe that's why it feels that way. But you've got like so many of the you've got obviously, Hitchcock and some of the other sort of classics that were before the 80s. But if you ask most people nowadays top 10 films, probably I'd say 7 or 8 out of 10 are going to be from the 80s onwards. And I imagine that at least 5 of them are going to be in the 80s or 90s themselves. Because I don't think anyone doesn't have a favorite film that came out in the 90s. When you've got literally 94 is one of the best films. 94 and 99 are two of the best years of film ever. And that's two. You've still got like another, 7 or 8 in that decade. There are so many. So when it comes to those sort of movies and stuff, I find that with comics, it's flipped. But I'm now getting into comics for like, retroactively, because I barely, when I was younger, I read the Beano and the Dandy, but only when the Beano was
same here. They did. I remember when I was young, in the kind of, they were still selling them in the newsagents and stuff. There wasn't so many kind of comic book shops as they are now, and that's where you basically get them. I mean, you can still get like the kind of some versions of the comics and British reprints, but they did these British versions of the American reprints, and they have these cardboard covers. There was, I think it was the Sensational Spider-Man, and I think they did Wolverine Unleashed and X-Men something or other. And they were just reprints of like 2 or 3 years before. So they were basically playing catch up. So it was the same comics and stuff. They didn't edit them too much, and there was some letters pages and stuff. But that kind of helped me get into comics as well. So just having that ability to just go up and grab one. Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff I was reading that I shouldn't have been reading at such a young age. Like Daredevil, Man Without Fear has got sex, violence, all this sort of like grim and dark. It's a Frank Miller book. So yeah. You're going to get the whole hog with that man. Love him or loathe him, you're going to get it.
Exactly. And it's like because I found my brother wasn't really into comic books necessarily. And so because of that, I was watching a lot of films I shouldn't have been. Like my parents always would say to my brother, because Rob is 17 years older than me. So my dad and my 2 brothers' mum split, and then dad got with my mum. So when that happened, Mum and Dad said to Rob, they're like, you can show him, as long as you think it's appropriate, you can show him anything, but make sure it's got not too much sex and not too many drugs in. And he was like, okay, that's fine. Cracked the knuckles and be like, right then, Aliens, Predator, lots of random Japanese films, like Versus and things like that. And it's just like all these crazy cool films. Has it got a dude with a giant sword in it? Let's go for it. Evil Dead, Army of Darkness. Let's just do all these ridiculously cool, over-the-top, amazing movies because there's no sex or drugs in them, apart from,
That's interesting though, isn't it? Like, it's interesting that parents seem to be okay with, and America as well, and kind of the censorship and everything. Extreme violence seems to be okay, but You show, you know, a loving relationship, a loving sexual relationship. Don't show that. Can't possibly show that. Oh no, sex. They might get ideas. You know, it's fucking ridiculous.
We got ideas how they were created. How like 99.99% of all humans are here right now.
Yeah, exactly. It makes, you know, it's bizarre that we have that kind of weird hypocrisy or that dichotomy of like, that's not appropriate, but that is.
I guess it's because if kids go out, if you see people doing drugs or having sex, there's an impression that you're going to go out and do that. If you watch some bloke with a sword try to kill aliens, it's like, well, good luck. Unless you have a very racist understanding of what aliens are, you're not going to have any luck finding them. Not going to have any.
Yeah, I think that's a whole nother discussion.
That is a big discussion. I almost opened up a very big can of worms.
Yeah,
there.
I was like, oh, we're going to go down this
get into the precipice.
Rabbit hole.
You're just looking at the edge of the cliff, like, do we want to delve down this, or should we turn back around? I think the field a bit more.
I think we'll leave that potentially spiraling ever and ever and onwards and further down. No, we'll leave that, but. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was kind of the blockbuster age was the 80s, I think. I think obviously arguably Spielberg created them in the 70s but they kind of really took off in the 80s, and that was that big boom. And then again, the 90s were kind of added to it. And again, now we've got a film out every day, you know, if it's on streaming or iTunes or Amazon or, you know, wherever, there's something always being released.
I think we've regressed, though, somewhat. I think in the 90s it was kind of the cream of the crop, where it was the good proportion of great films coming out and being recognised as great films, or at least coming out and then becoming cult classics like Fight Club and things like that. And the turn of the millennia as well kind of worked as well. But then because of the way the cinema is now and stuff, it's kind of like it's quite bad, really. But I go to the cinema for basically every Marvel film, most DC films, depending. I do like DC films. Megan isn't as fussed by them, so it kind of depends. But every Marvel film, definitely, obviously every Star Wars film. But then all the kind of in-between stuff, normally we'll go to the cinema with Megan's mum to see a couple of musicals. It's how I saw Have you seen Cats?
I've seen the stage. I think I was a baby when the stage show came to Blackpool, which was where I grew up, and apparently I loved it and was dancing along. My friend showed me it a couple of years ago, the filmed version of the stage version, and I went, "What the fuck is this?"
You have no idea, mate. The film, me and Megan. So Megan liked it when she was a kid, and Megan's mum really likes the stage production and the filming of the stage production. And so we went and saw Cats, the film, and we saw it at the cinema. And after about 15 minutes, me and Megan gave each other a look, and then Megan whispered to me after about an hour, she was like, if we weren't here with my mum, we would have left by now. And I was like, I'm glad you feel the same, because it is one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. And the reason I want to ask is because it seems like the kind of film you would tackle on The Secret Bores. But I'm like, it's one of those films where there's certain films like 1941, which are misguided, and there's now the other, and there's other films that are like, they're so bad they're good. Like Demons is a good example.
Demons is great, yeah,
so good. Like the special effects, like the physical effects are really good, but everything else is quite bad, which makes it work even better.
It makes fuck all sense, but that's kind of why I love it. It's just I was actually listening to my iTunes on Shuffle today, and Saxon came on. It was like, and I was like, I want to watch fucking Demons again. Brilliant. Again, but I love that. In the show, I don't just want to look at shit films.
No, exactly.
Or so good they're bad. I want to look at stuff that is really obscure or really off the wall. But then I also like to look at the kind of award-winning stuff on occasion. But I do tend to avoid kind of the Oscars and the award ceremonies and stuff. I've got friends who are into that, but it's not really my bag. And for me, I tend to avoid. I like genre stuff. I'm always into my genre stuff. If it's sci-fi, good. Fantasy, whatever. It's a crime drama or something like that. If it's got something about it, I'm more interested. If it's just a drama, I do enjoy a good drama. I enjoy a good rom-com, and all these other different films. Same with my music taste. I'm a bit of everything.
Oh, I'm the same.
And I was like. But I do tend to gravitate towards certain things. And, if I hear about something, I'll go, yeah, I'm going to watch that. Purely off one little thing I've heard about it. I'm like, yeah, I'm watching that. But yeah, I like having that variety and that scope and again, introducing things to people is great. And whether they listen, whether they watch it. I know Jack tries to watch everything, and Paul Mello, who's another fan, he tries to watch everything that I say, and sometimes the stuff I choose is like really difficult to find as well. Like it's really really obscure. You can find it on like a really crappy DVD from 1999 with a cardboard cover, and it's like you go out and find that. But I don't expect everybody to do that. But if they have some fun and they learn something within the podcast, I'm happy, as long as they're not. The last thing I want Spider-Dan and the Secret Bores to be is boring. So I hope it's never that. Given the title anyway. But yeah, it's fun to kind of delve into all these different kind of. And again, I think I agree, like 80s is kind of the cornucopia of kind of, you had these insane horror movies. You've got this crazy, like canon films and all those kind of action movies, all the stuff on like VHS Strikes Back as well. And, all the stuff kind of like Max Byrne likes and everything like that, all those cheesy Seagal films. I don't like Seagal. I'm sorry, Max. I do not like Seagal.
I've only seen a small amount of stuff that's actually in him. Obviously, he's in Machete, which is an absolutely incredible movie.
Yeah.
And then I saw, because my brother was born in 76, I think he's born only a few weeks away from like Dave. So him and Dave have a lot of similarities. So where I've had, and obviously in Comics in Motion, before your time, when we did the as an image
before I came along and spoiled everything.
No, you didn't spoil anything, Dan. But before you and Andy and the extended family was here, we did a portrait. All of us are superheroes, and I was Spider-Man.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And I was Spider-Man in part because he is also my favorite superhero and things, and he connected me to nerd stuff very early on in gaming and etc. But also because I was the youngest one there. And so it's kind of that thing where it's like in Infinity War and Endgame, whereas like all these people who are basically adults, and there's this one kid who gets like a quarter of their references, but he can kind of like, he kind of go there with everyone else. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. Like I've seen more films that you guys talk about than most people my age. So for people my age, like, God, you've seen loads of weird, crazy 80s films. When I talk to anyone who's slightly older, they're like, you've seen a few. You've seen some of the highlights. Not all of them. Not all the crazy stuff.
You should have seen everything.
Yeah.
But that's that expectation. Like, you haven't seen this, you haven't seen that. And there's a lot of the big ones like I haven't seen. Like,
yeah, same.
I've not seen Goodfellas. I've not seen Casino.
I saw Goodfellas for the first time a few years ago. I watched Godfather for the first time last year.
Yeah, I saw it a few years ago. I've still not seen Godfather 2.
No way.
Like the more someone tells me to watch something, the more I don't want to watch it. And there's a thing in me now a little bit with the Marvel films that it's almost like I'm edgy. I'm a little bit edgy. That I'm like, when I was a kid, I was really into it. I read all the comics, read the Avengers comics, and again, like before Iron Man, these are all like B-list characters. Like in the comic book world, not necessarily. Like the comics would sell enough for them to keep going. Like Daredevil and Iron Man in the 70s and 80s were like the tryout books. They would put new writers and artists on there because they knew it would sell enough, but then it didn't have to do silly numbers, or if it dropped a little bit, it's not gonna affect anything. So they'll just be like, we'll take that writer off, put that on, artist on, we'll do that, we'll do this. But yeah, I was like, I'd love to see this. And, when I saw Infinity War and Endgame, and I was like, you did it. You fucking did it. I can't believe it. I can't believe you did it. You managed to do this. And it's an achievement. It's a massive cinematic achievement. However you feel about it, it's crazy. But like the because my friend always quite liked that I was into the geeky comic book, kind of like anime and all this other cult films and stuff. And the second Marvel like really hit it big, he went, it's not as special anymore. It's not as like something we've shared together. It's not as unique. Like, and they don't know as much about it, or they, there's that meme going around where like, they see the Moon Knight trailer and like, I've always been a fan of Moon Knight. Moon Knight is my favorite. I know everything about Moon Knight, And it like, I'm not a gatekeeper, don't get me wrong. I'm like, you can love something, you can, you don't need to know everything about a film. You don't need to know who the actors are I don't know. I tend not to know who the producers or the cinematographers are. And
no, I know directors and actors, and that's normally it for me.
like writers sometimes, and composers a lot of the time. I'll notice.
Oh
a
yeah,
lot.
music is quite to a degree. It depends. I know a few big names like Hans Zimmer and people like that, but when it comes to like the more more down to earth stuff, so I'm like, yeah, Lin-Manuel Miranda, Hans Zimmer. There's a handful of others.
That'll do. Yeah, and that's it. But I would never like. I think maybe back in the day I was a bit snobbery, but I was initially like I think nowadays with I've talked about this, and I won't go into this particular thing because I've gone a bit over on it in the Geek podcast, and kind of like the kind of toxic fandom and stuff, and now it's kind of it's weird because like back in my day, like I'd love to talk to anybody about this stuff, and if anybody would listen, I was like, yeah. I'll go off on one. And I'm still doing it now, 35 years on or 34 years on, however old I am now. 35 in March. There we go.
Oh, funny. My birthday's in March. My birthday's in March as well. I'm 28 in March, though.
Yeah? What day?
16th.
13th.
Oh, funny enough, I have the same birthday as Megan's dad, oddly enough.
Cool.
There's a lot of jokes there that I saw go to your eyes. Thinking,
like daddy issues. Or something.
Yeah, things like that.
I won't go down. I'm a better person than that. I'm more respectful.
I still saw it in your eyes. I still felt it.
I love geek culture, and being part of the Comics in Motion family is really nice. And I found that the Twitter, my very small circle of Twitter that I keep, is really, really good and really, really healthy and nice. And I think if I drift too far out of there, I'm like, no, hate it. People are horrible.
I feel a bit like that as well.
I'm like,
especially with Star Wars stuff. I'm like, there's a lot of cool Star Wars people.
Spider-Man as well. Like the last year.
Get out the shallow. Once you get into the deep end, it's like, it's a bit scary out there.
No, don't like this. Yeah, get out. You dip your toe in and you go, no, don't like it. I love people, but I also hate them.
I love persons, but I hate people. Because I love individuals generally when you meet them. But when they become group, it's just an anonymous stuff. They just become assholes. And it's like with Star Wars, I know what you mean, because like with the MCU, when it all first started, it was a mammoth hit, but it still was... It was at the cusp of nerd stuff becoming mainstream, and I've always been a massive nerd. Not specifically with comics, but I was more of a video gaming nerd, or I'd read a lot of things, or that sort of stuff as well. But when it came to a lot of other things, with the movies and whatnot, it was really, really cool, and now it's peaks and stuff, and everyone watches it. But now it's kind of gone to the point where a lot of people were watching it, but now people have lost interest. They've drifted away. So now it's kind of like, how much of a nerd are you? But with Star Wars, this makes me sound like an asshole, because I've not said this on the podcast before, I don't think, but it kind of aggravates me how much some people are into Star Wars now when they didn't used to be, which makes me sound like a dick. But let me elaborate, which is like, I'm not a gatekeeper. I want to clarify. Anyone can love Star Wars or Marvel or anything as much or as little as they want to love anything. That's, however much or little people want to invest their time into whatever they want to watch, it's up to them. But it's kind of frustrating where I've always been into Star Wars. I've played Star Wars video games. I've always liked the prequels. Always. I grew up with them. Episode 1 came out in 99. I was 5. So my entire life, I've always had the prequels. I went and saw... I think it was Revenge of the Sith at the cinema. I can't remember if I saw Attack of the Clones, but I remember seeing Revenge of the Sith. So it's like all these things, and I shared the 6 movies with my dad, and he passed away before the 7th was even announced. So that's like a little time capsule of my life. And I had all these, like the lightsabers and the figurines and lots of cool Star Wars-y stuff, which I regret getting rid of, probably before 2010, and then, 2015 came around and it's all shot up again. But you get the people who are like, oh yeah, I've always loved Star Wars and stuff, but Mandalorian is the best thing about it. And I'm like, everyone is entitled to their opinion. But if you think Mandalorian is the best thing Star Wars has ever created, then that probably tells me you didn't really like Star Wars that much before Mandalorian. You probably enjoyed it. It was probably like, oh yeah, they're cool movies. Kind of how I feel somewhat about a lot of DC stuff. If you told me tomorrow you can never watch a DC film again, I'd be like, okay, well, let me watch The Batman with Robert Pattinson. After that, I'm not that fussed. I like the movies. I think they're cool, but I'm not that into them. Whereas if you said that about Star Wars, I'd be like, you fucking what? But it's just one of those things where I want to clarify to anyone who loves Mandalorian. You're welcome to. Mandalorian is great. But there's just little elements where it's like, I've always been really into Star Wars, and there's that little part of me when I see it fucking everywhere now. And now when I tell people I like Star Wars, you can see it in a lot of people's eyes. They go, oh, you're like everyone else. I'm like, No.
Yes. Yeah, no, I agree.
And that's
I
what
agree.
nerd stuff's happened a little bit. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm really happy people who are nerdy are getting accepted. But on the same token, I'm like, I don't want people thinking I like nerd stuff because everyone else likes nerd stuff. I like nerd stuff and used to get bullied for it. I've gone through the shit. And now that it's in the mainstream and everyone's liking it all hunky-dory, it's like, well, I'm glad that kids growing up now, in theory, don't get bullied as much for being geeks. But equally, I'm kind of feel like my own passions and geekdom are taken away somewhat because they're so in the mainstream. Like, oh, well, you like the Marvel films.
You know what? I agree. I agree to an extent. I do feel like, like I used to, if I talked about this in front of girls or something, it would be considered like, just the unsexiest thing ever.
Opposite of an aphrodisiac.
Yes, exactly. Like, let me tell you about Ego, the living planet. And they're like, get the fuck away from me.
How did you get out of my bedroom? Who are you?
See, I do creepy very well. So I think there is an element of that, it's like, again, with you, I'm not gatekeeping. There's something that, like my friend said, it kind of takes that kind of specialness away a little bit. There's something, and again, it's that edgy thing of me where I don't do it. Like I said with you on your podcast, I was like, I didn't watch The Mandalorian because everybody said it was so fucking good. And I know it's going to be good. Like, I didn't watch Jaws for years. And everyone goes, well, it's Jaws, it's popular, it's good. And I'm like, it probably will be very, very good. Do I want to watch it right now? Not particularly. And eventually I got around to Jaws and went, yeah, it was brilliant. Yeah, but it's not something that, like, again, it's like that. Again, I'm not one for peer pressure either. Like, again, it kind of goes back to like, you're wrong. You don't even like football. What the fuck's wrong with you? All that bullshit.
All the time in my life.
Why can't you like football? Why can't you be normal? And I'm like, this is my fucking normal. You can fuck off. I like this. You go do what the fuck you want. And that's it. And it's kind of, again, I think it is that kind of trauma a little bit. It's like it was like, this was what kept me sane. This is something special for me. And then when everyone's like, yeah, it's it's this, and I like this. And I've had people who know less about it than me tell me facts about it that are wrong. And I'm like, oh, you're just getting it. And also what I don't like is the YouTube generation where they've read the Wikipedia, they've watched a YouTube video on it, and they go, right, well, I'm the broad strokes of the story. So, say, for example, like Maximum Carnage, they'll go, well, this like you read the Wikipedia, it goes, this happens, this happens, this happens, and this happens. But you don't get those like intimate moments, those revealing character moments. It's not the same. It's like watching a film blindfolded. You're not going to get the same experience as actually reading it. So, and I don't mind, I'm not particularly, I don't worry about spoilers and things. I know there are people out there that do, and that's fair enough. I get it. I understand. But, if I've read a spoiler, I'm like, yeah, but when I read it, I'll experience it and I'll feel different about it. Reading it on a Wikipedia page is nothing. I'll forget that instantly. But if I absorb it and take it in the way it's been designed to, it's been created in such a way for me to ingest that information and enjoy it in such a way. There's so many books I've read that I knew exactly what was going to happen. I knew exactly where it's leading, just comic book history, for example. Like, I just know how that ends. I know how Nightfall ends. I know how, Daredevil, the Man Without Fear ends, whatever, like, you name it. I still read it and I still enjoy it and I still get a buzz out of it. Yeah. Even, and even certain films that have still spoiled for me, today, like that. I knew that Luke cameo was coming like literally like years before I watched The Mandalorian for Book of Boba Fett. I still enjoyed it. I still got a real kick out of it. And it was a good, thing to enjoy because again, if someone tells me about it, I go, oh. But when I watch it, again, it's designed for me to elicit a feeling from me, to grab me and pull me by my heartstrings. And there's something to be said about people enjoying. It's like people enjoying media as a third party. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
well, they're like kind of they've got it on the background and on their phone and not really fully paying attention. Is that what you kind of?
Yeah, kind of like, or you. you don't watch a show.
Yeah.
Say someone does a review of, I don't know, Batwoman.
Mm-hmm.
You watch that review.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, that is my opinion.
I see exactly what you mean. Yeah.
And,
Third party. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And they go, well, I respect him and his opinion. So that is now my opinion, even though they've not watched it.
That's actually one of the reasons I stopped listening to a lot of film review podcasts. I used to listen to, so there's the YouTube channel CinemaSins that people should know because they do the Everything Wrong With videos, which are very clever, and they've got a very clever thing on YouTube. I don't really watch them anymore as much as I used to, but I used to listen to their podcast. I think it's called the Sincast. And the thing was, is I used to listen to it religiously. I used to love all their content. And then it got to a point where they'd review films I hadn't seen, and then it would taint whether or not I'd watch like a trailer for a film, or I'd hear of a film, like, that sounds cool, and then they'd shit on it, and I'm going, now, and then it's like, is the film actually bad, or do they just hate it? And then the more you listen, you go, they would hate films I love, and I'm like, do I like that? I've described it in this way that, like, with Comics in Motion and VHS Strikes Back, and for example your show and things, if it's a film I've seen or a film that I have no intention of seeing, I'll happily listen to almost anything. When it's the in-between, if it's someone like, I know what kind of films Jack likes, I know what kind of films Chris and Dave respectively like, and I know that, you know, depending on who says what and what the criticisms are, will give me a vague idea of what I will think of the film to a degree. But I also want to know what these guys think because I'm friends with them and I want to know their opinions on things. Sure. When it's a random stranger on the internet, I'm never going to talk to them. Their opinion doesn't make any difference to me. And also, then it can kind of taint things a little bit.
Yes.
And I've had arguments before where it aggravates me a bit. And this happens in the comic book world and things. And I understand where people come from to a degree. But when people have a strong opinion on a film they haven't seen, and it really, sorry to be, if anyone's listening who's one of these people, it really fucks me off. Because I'm like, you can have an opinion to a degree on it looks like they've done this, or I heard they did this and it changed that. It's like, yeah, but you don't know how this change or that change has actually impacted the film. It's all well and good saying, they changed this thing about Batman. It's like, okay, yes, if you look at this one sentence and say, for example, if they made Batman's suit white, for example, I know that would be, you know, contrary to his whole thing, but if they said, I'm not watching the new Batman film, he's got a white suit in it, and I go, okay, now that sentence makes it sound like they've ruined Batman. If you watch the movie and there's one scene where he's wearing a white suit and there's a genuine actual reason for it, like he was hunting someone in the day, for example, and it actually made more sense for him to be white than black because of one reason or another. In the context, that works, and that is then sometimes, especially with trailers and things, they make a big fuss about certain things, and that's in the film for like 18 seconds. It's like bloody Jurassic Park Fallen Kingdom, whereas like Jeff Goldblum's narrating the trailer, and then in the film he's actually in it almost less than he's in the goddamn trailer, and you're like, why did you even put him in there? I thought Jeff Goldblum was going to be a big part of this film, and he's not. And it's just little things like that where I find if you're going to have a true opinion on something, you either have to have done like a ridiculous amount of research. If it's like a problematic movie or something, it's slightly different. Yeah. But it's when like I struggle because sometimes I want to have film conversation with people and they go, have you seen this film? Have you seen this film? Have you seen this film? And I'm like, I've only seen one of those films, which I'm happy to talk about. But the other one, I don't want my thoughts being tainted too much. I want to watch it and try and go in without too much expectation. And I think that's where the spoilery stuff bothers me more.
Well, I think you can say I don't like the look of that.
Yeah.
But if you see a trailer and you go, I don't like the look of that. For example, I'm not really looking forward to the Morbius film with Jared Leto. I don't think it looks good.
Yeah.
However, I can't say it's a shit film because I've not seen it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It could be the greatest film ever made. I doubt it.
I doubt it too.
I said to Max, it's not often I'll miss it. Like, Max is really good. He's really passionate. We'll go see anything. And I really appreciate that about him. But even I was like, sometimes I spend a bit too much time with Andy and he's like, it looks shit. I hate it. Blah, 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 blah. And, but he will still watch it. Like, as angry or as shit as something is, he will go. Like, and I respect Andy for going and sitting down. Like, all the stuff I bring to him as well, he will sit down and watch it. And he does have opinions on stuff, and they're strong opinions. And I think what you were saying as well about, you don't want it to taint a certain film. Like Andy's reviews, sometimes I'll leave until I've seen the film, until I've thought about it, take some time to think and go, how do I feel? Because you come out of the cinema and you go, that was the greatest film I've ever seen. And then 2 weeks later you go, wait a minute, they tricked me. You're like, that was rubbish. I came out of Eternals and I went, it was fine. It was good. And then I went, hold on a second. They bamboozled me.
I call it cinema syndrome. There's a lot of
Yeah.
films I see and I go, and someone says, what do you think of the film? I go, I thought it was brilliant. And they go, did really? And I go, I think that's how I felt. And then you think about it, go, actually, I was just wrapped up in the world now, all the comfy seats and the really cool sound and stuff. I mean, I still like Eternals. I think it's a good movie.
Yeah,
but I think it's
that's fine.
probably about half an hour too long. There's far too much exposition in it, and the main character is boring as all fuck. And Jon Snow didn't need to be in it. But I still enjoyed it. But once again, I'm a shill where I'm like, if I enjoy something, I will still defend it while simultaneously criticizing it. But sorry, you were saying.
I love poking fun out of stuff I love. Like I've been, I've been showing you, I've been trolling my sister with all these Disney films I've been watching and stuff and making fun of them, and she's like, stop ruining Disney, you prick. And I'm like, but I loved it. I love all the Disney stuff, and I appreciate the Disney stuff, and even the controversial stuff, and the inappropriate stuff. It's like it's just part of that history and that culture, and it's important that we remember these things to not repeat those mistakes in the future. And I would lovingly poke fun at all my favorite kind of films and all the best films. I'll still poke fun at. It's not that I hate them. I'll poke fun at anything, within a degree, obviously. But speaking of like people like just saying things look shit, I remember a friend of mine at the time, he saw the Civil War trailer, Captain America Civil War, and Spider-Man rocks up. Yeah. And he's obviously at the end of the trailer, he goes like, Underoos, jumps in, steals the shield and goes like, hello, guys, or whatever he says. Hi, everyone, I think it was. And he went, nah, look shit. And I'm like, why? He was like, right, one, why is he so young? I went, well, he's 15 in the comics when he becomes Spider-Man. Why are his eyes moving? In the comics, his eyes move to express emotion. It doesn't necessarily make much sense, but that's just how they show what he's experiencing through those eyes. That's just something they do. So they've obviously taken that. His suit looks weird. Well, they're obviously going for a different look. It's a very Alex Ross-inspired look, that costume. And again, I was just like, I hate saying this, but I'm like, read a fucking comic, man. like it's a comic book. That's there's an issue I slightly have as well with the new intro they have for the Marvel films, the Marvel Studio, because it used to be like the flipping of the comic book pages, which I loved because like that's where it's coming from. That's where, and even now, Kevin Feige is still reading the most up-to-date comic books to steal ideas from and put in the film. Like he's still reading, he's still going back to the source, which is the important thing. And now that new intro, you have like not even a second and a half worth of comic book flipping pages until it turns into the sketch work and the production art and everything like that, and then it becomes the characters in clips from the film. I get it, but I was kind of like, you're not kind of like respecting, like even now they don't pay the artists and the writers. They give them a nice little thanks on the credits. Like Ed Brubaker, who created the Winter Soldier, brought Bucky back from the dead. He didn't create Bucky, but he brought him back, and the idea of giving him the arm and everything. He got paid more for the cameo in the film than he did for creating and coming up with that idea and that storyline.
My lord.
Which is insane to me. And he's like top tier, he's a novelist as well. I think he's working on the newest Maniac Cop, or maybe that's not happening now, I'm not sure, whatever, but it's crazy to me. But I was like again, you've not even given it a chance. Like you were saying, like, but if Batman was in a white suit, he was like, this Spider-Man is totally different from all the other Spider-Man we had before. And look at what we have now with No Way Home. People are going, this is the best film of all time and this is the greatest thing and I can't believe they managed it and things like that. But again, without that small little introduction, but again, people were so quick to write shit off. Like straight away, people are so quick to write something off. Again, I made a promise with Max, so we are going to see Morbius together. I said the only way you're going to get me to see Morbius is if we go together. And he went, deal. So whenever that fucking film comes out, we're going.
Yeah, I remember
I think it's April Fool's. I think it's out.
Like, I don't know, because it was one of those things, isn't it, where it's like certain films me and Megan have spoken about, it was like they kind of come as a surprise because we're like, you're paying attention to it and there's, it's been delayed. Like Let Them Be Carnage, which I know that I'm going to be appearing on the Spider-Man, the Secret Bores, and we're going to talk about Maximum Carnage, Absolute Carnage, and Venom Let There Be Carnage.
All of the Carnages.
Vastly different interpretations of Carnage. Well, one of them is. But we'll get into that on your show. Yes. But with those sort of films, it was like, Let There Be Carnage. It was like, like, oh, it's going to be coming out in this year, and they got delayed, and I was like, it's not going to come out 2021 at all. We're not going to see it for years. It's going to come out. It's going to be an absolute mess, and it's going to be unwatchable, which is different opinions. I didn't think it was. That was great, but then it was just kind of like a month, like 6 weeks. And then 6 weeks before release, I was like, oh, here's a trailer. And you're like, what? Oh, it's coming out soon. So, what? What? I don't have time. Like, I need to make space in my goddamn calendar. What? I need, cinema now, it used to be when I was a single man with nothing to fucking do. It was like, oh, I used to go with my mate Alex and my mate Callum. We'd get limitless cards and just go to sometimes 3 times a week, just see almost everything that was out for ages. Especially at Halloween, it's great because you can just watch all the horror films. And horror films are probably like, I love horror films, but they are the least consistent film genre there is, in a sense of I'd say the rom-coms are probably the most consistent, because almost every rom-com is between a 6 and 8 out of 10. It's very hard to find any that are outside of that. And with horror, it's like, you could watch 3 horrors in a row, and it could be a 1 out of 10, a 9 out of 10, and a 4 out of 10, and you could look at them all and think they're all going to be brilliant or all going to be terrible. And some can just really surprise you. There's some brilliant indie films that you would never think are good, are genius, and there's big budget ones that are wank. And it's just there's no consistency to horror. It's hilarious and brilliant. Yeah. But with that, like, when we would go to see all these films and stuff, I'd have so much time. But now it's like with me and Megan, she doesn't want to see every film I want to see at the cinema, and I'd almost go watch anything because I just love the cinema experience. But now it's just like, we have jobs and stuff, and I work from home 2 days a week. She's a teacher and stuff, and she normally gets home like 4:30-ish. Whereas when I work from home, I finish at 5. But if I'm not working from home, I don't get home till near 6. Well, if we have to go to the cinema, the nearest cinema is a 15-minute drive. There's like, from where I live, there's every type of cinema. There's View, Picture House, Odeon, Showcase, Cineworld, all of them, all within 15 minutes. But it's still a 15-minute drive there, parking, whatever, gets into the cinema, blah, blah, blah. 15-minute drive home, 20 minutes, half an hour of adverts, then minimum 2 hours for the movie. So the whole evening is gone. It's a 4-hour job, but 3 to 4 hour job for each film you see. And for that, it's just like, it's such a huge time. And if you watch one a week, that's a lot of time gone. So with me and Megan, a lot of films come out, and I'm just like, my thing is basically every Marvel film for a while. When we eventually have kids, is probably when I'm going to start giving up on it. But it's like, for the time being, and that's not going to be for many years, but it's like, at the moment, it's like, while I can, I'm going to try and see every movie that comes out of Marvel. And Morbius came out, and I was like, I will watch that because I'm more interested in what they're going to do with Blade. And Morbius is probably going to be an anti-hero or a team-up or something with Blade. He's going to have some sort of connection, most likely. And obviously, I'm the original Blade first 2 films. That's the third one, but the first 2 are just phenomenal movies. Yeah. And it's just like with Morbius, it's like it's part of the Sonyverse, but it's also, because the Sonyverse is MCU canon in some ways, it's that kind of weird thing where it's like Venom is in a different universe, but Morbius might be in the MCU. And Spider-Man is...
There's all these these multiversal films.
I'll clarify, minor spoilers for Venom Let There Be Carnage, just to clarify into this conversation.
And No Way Home as well.
Oh, yeah.
If you haven't already seen
But go watch it if you haven't. Fuck me.
Please,
such a good movie.
Please go and see that. But yeah, there's all this graffiti stuff that's going on, because there's Batgirl's coming out, and that's supposed to have Keaton in it. Spoilers. Potentially, but then also like the graffiti in Morbius is the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man in the graffiti, and but then the Vulture is supposed to be in it as well from the Tom Holland MCU stuff.
Homecoming.
So it's like, but then you've also got Oscorp that looks like from the Andrew Garfield films in the same film, and you're like, what the fuck is happening here? I have no idea. So I'm just going to, again, based on that, I have to now go and see it to make any sense of that bloody trailer, really.
Yeah. But it's like, it's not something high up on the list. It's just like, there's a lot of, it's like Eternals. I saw that and I was like, yeah, it looks okay. And I watched one trailer, I was like, meh. And then I watched another trailer, I was like, that actually looks really cool. But then I saw the runtime, I was like, uh-oh. When it's longer than Infinity War, you've got some big boots to fill, and didn't quite. But with all these films that are coming out, especially because, Black Widow, which surprised me, I thought I was surprisingly enjoyable, mainly because Florence Pugh is phenomenal.
Best thing in it.
Both one of the most beautiful people I think I've ever seen, but also one of the most talented actors, and everything I've seen her in, be it Midsummer, Little Women, Black Widow, she is amazing. And it's just like, all these shows and the MCU shows and all this other stuff, it's like, for the moment, I can handle all this MCU stuff because most of my focus at the cinema or whatever, or TV watching, is basically Star Wars and MCU. That's my main thing. Megan's is Bake Off and Drag Race. So I've got an encyclopedic knowledge of drag queens in all the different drag races, and I know a lot about Bake Off. But like, there are kind of main things, and all the other stuff kind of gets put to the side a little bit. But if it wasn't for the shared universe, I wouldn't be half the MCU films that are coming out. I wouldn't really be that fussed by it. But because I'm kind of like, while I'm riding the wave of being able to consume all MCU content at the moment, excluding Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Inhumans, those can fuck off. I didn't even try Inhumans. I Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I think I tried one episode and I was like, it's kind of boring. And a friend of mine was like, I've watched all 7 series. It really picks up around series 4. And I was like, well, so I have to watch 3 series of 24 episodes? That's like 18 hours per season.
However, I heard the same thing about the Clone Wars, the animated series as well. And I was like, do I want to start it from the beginning? And I know it's all out of order as anyway. Like all the episodes. I did, like, I went online and someone like put it all in chronological order, and I went, that's too much effort. I
didn't even do that. When I showed Megan, I actually went through and cherry picked. I say to anyone listening who hasn't yet watched Clone Wars, okay, skip all of series 1 and skip the movie. The movie's wank. Skip all of series 1 except for the 5th episode, Lair of Grievous. I think one of the first episodes called Rookies, and then there's the last 4 episodes, which is the Ryloth stuff and the finale. Everything else you can just skip. It's not. And series 2, there's like a few Jar Jar things you can skip. Aside from that, most of it, like most of series 2 is pretty good.
No,
then
I
series
think Jar
2
Jar is integral. All the Jar Jar stuff is integral.
But Clone Wars only 20 minutes per episode, though, at least.
True. Yeah, there is that. I like one of the weirdest episodes to me was when the C-3PO and R2-D2 have a spa day.
Oh yeah.
I was like, what is this? and that one right at the end where like Jar Jar like gets his rocks off.
Oh yeah, when Mace Windu's just
priestess.
Yeah, and she's this really powerful, influential woman, and Mace Windu's just kind of there, like, why is she like Jar Jar so much? Like, what's the appeal?
Because she'll only speak to Jar Jar, and he's like, why will she only speak to Jar Jar? And it's like, for some reason, she's attracted to Jar Jar. But there you go. Opposites attract, I guess. But it's like I watched all of Inhumans. I binged all of it. I think I watched it in a day or 2 days because I was working from home, and I went, I can't be arsed working. So I just turned it on. I was like, this is just going to happen. And I like the Inhumans. I like those characters. Again, very obscure kind of...
Yeah, I know nothing about them at all.
Background kind of characters. Like when I watched Encanto, there was some kind of Inhuman-esque elements to it. And I was like, oh, it's a little bit like Inhumans. They're very much not the X-Men. And I know Marvel have tried to make them the X-Men. And it doesn't work. It never will work. You can't make the Eternals the X-Men. You can't... The Eternals and the Inhumans have more in common than the X-Men, Inhumans, or the Eternals. Like, it's not the same. And I don't know why they're trying to fit that square peg in a round hole. Just don't do it. Don't bother. Because there's a lot of problematic stuff within their culture and the way the isolationist nation and stuff. But they fucking just screwed the pooch with the characters. I was saying to Max on our WhatsApp, I was saying that because there's a rumor that he's going to come back and in a future MCU film,
right?
And I was like, well, it can't be that version, because that version. So in the comics, he's this uber powerful character. He has a voice that can shatter mountains.
Who is this person?
Black Bolt.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, I think I heard about the Black Bolt potential movie or series coming out. I think I've heard rumors of that.
There is something going around. So Black Bolt he's the king of the Inhumans. He's basically, the Inhumans are an ancient race of humanity and very highly advanced. And they were basically exposed at the teenage years to this mist. Mm-hmm. And it gives them, it could kill them, it could give them wings, it could, they could turn massively fat, or nothing could happen at all. It's absolute pot luck. Black Bolt gets his powers, he can't speak, and he accidentally liquefies his parents by saying the word no, which is in the show as well. They use that in the show. It's not very good, not the way they do it. But yeah, he ends up, and then he swears never to speak again. He uses sign language. He is as strong as like the Hulk. He is like top tier, like God level, like Thor, Hulk, you name it. That's kind of strength level. In the show, he gets beat up by 3 coppers.
Right.
So I was like, I saw that in the trailer. And again, I reacted a little strongly to the trailer. But again, I did eventually go and watch it. I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm just going to sit down and watch and see if it is as bad as people have said or if it's as disappointing. And it was, you know.
How many episodes was it?
I think it's like 7. It is on Disney Plus.
I'm not going to watch it. No, I'm not going to watch it. Just to clarify.
Yeah, I think I could see what they were trying to do, and I could see elements from the comic. There's a really good run by Paul Jenkins and Jay Lee in the early 2000s. It's like a 12-issue maxi series, and that is all you need to know really about the Inhumans. They're really, really cool characters, unique. But yeah, they just absolutely just butcher them. Just like, and again, they were supposed to be in a movie. They announced they were going to do a movie.
Yeah,
and what happened was there was a gap in the TV schedule. And I think it was like Patriots Day or something. And they said, you have to make something and we'll do a cinema release of the first 2 episodes. But you've got to make it within 6 weeks.
Jesus.
And they got the director or showrunner from Iron Fist, which obviously a very well-lauded, well-reviewed show. And they went, awful. We know you can turn around shit quick to get this done. And they did it really on the cheap, really shit. You know, bad CGI and everything, and the actors are trying, but the stuff they're working with is not good. The only thing I liked is Lockjaw, which is effectively the dog. Yeah, he's a giant kind of bulldog. He's got a little antenna. He can teleport. That's basically it. And he was the best thing in it.
Yeah, that is quite problematic, and it's one of those things where it's annoying how many projects and how many things get ruined by producers and by studios and people not being given ample time to breathe. Yeah, I mean, 6 weeks is nothing. Like I've filmed, edited, and put together a music video in more time than 6 weeks. Granted, I didn't spend my entire, it wasn't 6 pure weeks. It was, evenings when I could and stuff. Sure. But that is so rough, and it's so unfortunate for the characters and for that, because then Inhumans, is that ever going to get another chance? Because, I think with the MCU, obviously the next phase of the MCU is multiversal stuff, and they're going to bring in Fantastic Four. I think the guy who I should really say to Tonya, don't listen anymore, because I'm going to start talking about. Because
we're just
Sorry, Tonya.
Never listen to anything I'm on, because I'll ruin everything.
She's already aware. She's already aware of you in the Discord channel.
I feel I feel like I'm never going to live this down now. I'm like the spoiler, because I'm just. Well, I'll be honest. I didn't really know the rules. I'll be honest.
What are the rules?
What are the rules?
I'm glad you got that. Was the Sunny reference, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm very glad you got that reference. Well, I haven't watched the newest series yet.
I watched it. I watched a few episodes. It's okay. It's not. I don't think it's top tier, but there's some good episodes there.
I think the season with the water park is the best season. And I think from there it's just gone down slightly. But anyway, mild spoilers for certain future MCU stuff. So obviously they're doing multiverse stuff, obviously with Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, with what happened in WandaVision, etc. And then Fantastic Four is going to be like, I think, the mid crescendo. That's going to be, we're probably going to get an Avengers team up kind of movie, and I imagine they're either going to pop up at the end of that or in there, and then we'll get the Fantastic Four solo movie. That'll be the middly stuff, and then by then we're going to find out who the big bad is, be it Mephisto or I know it's going to be Kang, isn't it? Obviously because of Loki. Very much spoilers, and
especially spoilers for Loki.
Yeah. So with all that in mind, like the next phase, and I feel like then towards the end of that, they're probably going to try and get X-Men in some way, because there's a lot of rumblings going on of how they're going to canonize X-Men and stuff. And then that's probably going to be the third sort of chapter. So we've got the Infinity War saga, Multiverse saga, then the multiverse stuff is probably going to allow the X-Men to be a thing. And then I imagine, I'm just thinking, I mean, this is not going to be, I mean, the first, the Infinity War was like more than 10 years, wasn't it? How long? It was 2008 to 2000.
Yeah, 2008 till about, 2019, maybe?
Yeah, so it's like 11 to 12 years. So the rate they're churning them out now, I imagine will probably be about another 7 years by the time we're at the next one. So, I mean, I'm going to be like mid-30s. Well,
dead. You're going to be dead. We'll all be dead. We're not going to live very long.
Probably not, no. But then the next phase is probably going to be X-Men. But like, I'm probably going to be, 40 by the time that sort of stuff happens. It's like, how?
Are you going to be bothered?
Well, I don't know, because
are we gonna do you think there's gonna be a superhero fatigue? Because even I think, as much as I love superheroes, sometimes I'm like, the last thing I want to do is watch another fucking superhero thing. At the moment where we're at right now, Megan is definitely getting it, but at the moment it's manageable for most people because it's no more than one a week in general.
Like, I know, like, I never got into the DC stuff because, with one, I don't care about DC characters even a quarter as much as Marvel characters. I've always grown up with Marvel games and the Spider-Man games. Obviously, Spider-Man gets so interconnected with all the other stuff, and so does X-Men. So you play X-Men and Spider-Man games, you know, like a quarter of the main characters in the Marvel universe who are the big hitters and stuff. And so with DC, I never really had that amount. I knew about, Batman and stuff, but I never got into DC as much. So when all those, the Arrowverse stuff came out, and it was about 24 fucking episodes of series, like 7 series of stuff.
I gave up. Like I was pretty committed. Like I watched Arrow first 2 seasons, 3, even 4, I think, and then Flash I enjoyed more as a show. I watched a bit of Legends and then into Supergirl, and then me and Andy we watched like The Crisis, but I turned off years, and he and Natalie carried on, and I was like, yeah, Crisis is good, that'll do.
And that's the end of part 1. Thanks as always for tuning in, friends. Part 2 will be out at the same sort of time next week, but if you can't wait that long and you want to support the show, and you want to get hours of additional content that isn't just early access stuff, that is content you can't find anywhere else, please consider checking out my Patreon, patreon.com/genuine Chit-Chat. The link to it is in the description, but for as little as £1 a month or $1.50, you get access to an exclusive audio feed, and in that you get access to part 1 and part 2 of episodes of Genuine Chit-Chat when part 1 drops in one full unsplit episode, and you also get mine and Megan's Afterthought shows where we review movies or TV series every week, and we do it more than once a week, but we normally record a bunch of them and then release them weekly. And when part 2 drops next week on this very feed, the normal listeners among you'll get part 2, but all the Patreons, because they've already got part 1 and part 2, they get a bonus Afterthoughts as well. So they get 2 episodes of Afterthoughts next week. And most of the episodes of Afterthoughts of me and Megan are 15 to 20 minutes long. We do spoiler-free reviews of new movies and most TV series, and then we do spoiler-filled reviews of certain older stuff and things. And at the moment we are doing a Big Tom Hanks rewatch. We started with Big. We might do a couple of the movies before Big, but at the moment we've done Big, and we've recorded our thoughts on The Burbs as well as Turner and Hooch as well. I think we've got Joe versus the Volcano and A League of Their Own next. So we're watching a lot of Tom Hanks movies and we're doing reviews on those, and it's a lot of fun. It's just, silly fun. But for as little as £1 a month, you get access to all of that audio content that is exclusively on Patreon, and you get to support the show, and you get early access to Genuine Chit-Chat stuff. Plus you get Star Wars book reviews on there that are spoiler free that you can't get anywhere else, including on my YouTube channel or on Star Wars Comics and Canon or anything like that. So if you want to support the show, please do that. Another way you can support the show is you can give it 5-star rating on Spotify. You can give it reviews on Good Pods or Apple Podcasts or other such places like that. You can share with your friends on social media, or you can just talk to people about it. That spreads really well, word of mouth of my show. I would hugely appreciate any of those ways. And if you're already doing it, then you have a portion of my undying love, because anyone who's willing to share the show, support it, review, and contribute money to it just blows me away. There's so many of you who are willing to do that. So please consider checking that out, patreon.com/genuine Chit-Chat, or try and share my show in the multitude of other ways that one can. But aside from that, guys, what can you expect from Genuine Chit-Chat and whatnot going forward? So next week's going to be part 2 of my chat with Dan. It continues on a superhero content discussion. We talk about comic books and Spider-Man and Venom, as well as how the streaming era has changed movies and international movie licensing, Sony's impact on home media, lots of different things like that. And I've got links in the description to Spider-Dan's site and some of his social media. There's also a link to his appearance on the Era of Geek as well. And at the end of this sort of nattering, there's going to be his promo, as in the promo for Spider-Dan and the Secret Boars. So lots of things to do with Spider-Dan in the description and in this episode. But coming up, I've got an episode due for recording with Spider-Dan and Rhea and Megan. We're going to do a special Disney-esque episode, but I'll get more into that when it gets nearer the time. And then I've got 2 or 3 people that I'm currently speaking with, and we just need to put something in the calendar so they can come on the show as well. So there's some authors, there's some podcasters, there's some interesting people, some very interesting conversations coming. But that's generally what you can expect going forward. In addition to that, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. The link's in the description. I'm nearing 100 subscribers on there. I know the vast majority of you do not listen on YouTube, but if you do not listen on YouTube, but you have a YouTube account, please go over to Genuine Chit-Chat on YouTube and subscribe to that, because then I can change my channel link name from / hundreds of numbers and letters to /Genuine Chit-Chat. And in addition to that, if you go over to my YouTube channel as well, many of my episodes of Genuine Chit-Chat have got video on them, and this conversation has got video recorded on it as well, which will be out next week on YouTube as well. And in addition to that, My conversations are in genre playlists, so you can listen to movie-related conversations or sciencey ones or whatever your fancy is, whatever reason you listen to Genuine Chit-Chat, they're all in there, as well as all of my Star Wars comics and canon episodes, and they're all in genres as well. So if you just want to hear everything possible about Darth Vader in the canon, there's a playlist for that. Same with Dr. Aphra, same with the War of the Bounty Hunters crossover, loads of things that are geeky, and anyone who's enjoyed this episode with Spider-Dan would probably enjoy most of my Star Wars episodes and the many other episodes I've done of Genuine Chit-Chat. So if this is your first time, please check those things out. But that's going to be it from me, guys, here. I really hope you enjoyed this conversation. I'll be back next week with Spider-Dan Part 2, and if you want to hear that early, please become a Patreon supporter, plus you get hours of additional content from myself and Megan that's already uploaded on there, and also you get additional ones every week. So yeah, thank you so much for listening, guys. I hope you're all doing well, especially as I record this. You might have heard some wind in the background because in England we're getting the storm at the moment. I think it's Storm Eunice, I think it's called. But yeah, I hope you're all staying safe, staying well, enjoying the show, and I will talk to you guys next week.
Hello, Spider-Dan here of the Spider-Dan and the Secret Balls podcast. Just wanted to give you a quick introduction on what I do and why you should check it out. My main mission for the podcast is to spotlight the best kept secrets in entertainment that a mainstream audience may find boring. I cover these topics in various different formats, including Secret Defenders, where I challenge my guests to defend their favourite films that are underrated, obscure or infamous, or Clone Wars, where we compare similar pieces of media and see which one will be crowned the victor, and Secret Ball Stories, where we compile a top 5 list in high fidelity fashion. I have various guests from all walks of life, including friends, family, comic book professionals and actors, while also doing the odd solo podcast and Patreon YouTube video here and there. If you like entertaining and informative discussions and are sick of content creators covering the same old MCU and Netflix programming, take a walk on the wild and the weird side by joining the Prattalion. Swing over to SpiderDan&theSecretBalls.com for all the information you may need, such as links to the podcast, social media accounts, and how you can support the podcast. That's SpiderDan&theSecretBalls.com. That's BORES. Thanks for joining me, and as always, prepare for prattle.
You have just experienced host, creator, everything elser of Genuine Chit-Chat, and also the host and creator of Star Wars comics and canon, found on the Comics in Motion podcast, Mike Burton.